Welcome back. We are ready to go, and it's going to be RDU versus Casie, in case you didn't quite catch it just before that. And I'm excited for this one, Saul. I think both these players are definitely characters that we have in Hearthstone. RDU been quite an outspoken player for many, many years now, as he's one of the veterans of the scene. And Casie is not too shy either when it comes to not even just talking about the game, but other players and other players' deck choices and so on, so on. So it's kind of cool to see these two players clash, and they were tweeting at each other right before this match is going to start, just about how much they're going to destroy each other here. So I'm excited to see who's going to be the victor in that little fight.
Yeah, indeed. And you do love to see it because, I'm a big advocate for a bit of trash talk going back and forth, as long as it's, in good spirits and within the spirit of competition, which here it definitely is because they're friends and they're practice partners and it's all in good fun. So when, RDU's tweeting that, this is so free, I'm going to be back streaming Battlegrounds within 10 minutes. There's no actual malice behind that. It's just funny. You just throw it out there.
And looking at these lists now, Casie has the Zoo, has the Mage as well, but he is a subscriber to this, for me, a confused rogue list. So we'll see if he has something he can make this work. Whereas on the other side, RDU's rogue list with his stealth rogue, to me looks like a bit of a stronger deck. And then he's ended up with the Highlander Priest as well in his lineup after the bans have gone down. So who you like in here? Like the Highlander Priest being available, or Casey's kind of just no priest at all submission?
Yeah, the no priest lineup did really interest me coming into this. Obviously, you're expecting to be sacrificing your bomb warrior in most scenarios, so you are expecting most likely to play Zoo Rogue Mage in most series up until that point, which is almost about as aggressive as a lineup as you can come up with in this metagame, unless you want to throw a face hunter in there. I guess your rogue build could be more aggressive because Casie probably has one of the least aggressive builds of rogue as well. But generally, it's a very tempo-heavy, mid-rangey kind of lineup that I think is looking to expose particular holes in people's lineup, like potentially Highlander Priest on the other side from RDU. So we'll see if that does work out for Casie.
Yeah, and there is always the element whether you believe it is strong enough to commit to, but if everyone is expecting Priest and you don't bring it, then maybe some tech choices and deck choices and builds just are lessened versus you a bit because they were built with Priest in mind if the thought pattern was to ban Warrior. So it's not a huge deal, but it is something that does come across in this lineup building. But looks like the players are just going to dive straight in, and RDU going to be on the top on that Mage, and Casie on the bottom, and he is on the Warlock. So swiftly turned into a pretty common matchup, Saul, but also just as swiftly probably going to stop with the Warlock nerf we've got coming soon.
Yeah, I'm not sure to what degree the Dark Glare nerf is going to kill Zoo, but I think it's certainly going to impact it. Obviously, the fact it does become 1 mana cheaper, but I think that is small fry in comparison to how many fewer mana crystals you now get generated from the Dark Glare.
Here, though, no way to shuffle any soul fragments in yet for Casie, so he doesn't have those scholars active for the near future, but he's just going to play the merchant on curve, not go for the tap, and just say, yeah, I'll just have some more spider tanks for now.
This is a pretty sick Sorcerer's Apprentice turn as well, especially with the security here for RDU, that he has the second one in the bank. Devolving Missiles, best target in the deck, really, is that expired merchant most of the time. So this allows RDU to just fully tempo out here, use the Brain Freeze, guarantee the Devolving Missiles, essentially to discard 2 cards from his opponent, protect his Apprentice, continue the pop-off next turn. Insane.
I don't know if it's just me and the way I'm recalling RDU and to an extent Tice's games, but this mirror image is a pick I've only really seen these two players bring in their Mage list, and I feel like every time I've seen it played, it's been good.
Whoa! He's not wrong. He's not wrong. Raven, sniping RDU, get ready. Get your Battleground lobbies loaded up. You're going to need to queue into RDU pretty soon. This one's going to be over fast, okay?
What kind of rating do our viewers require to queue into RDU at the moment?
I'm not sure. I think he's still on a downswing, so I will
10K?
choose. I will choose not to say in order not to rub it in. Yeah.
This is a problem though, because not only is the Sorcerer's Apprentice still there, it can be cleaned up with Soulshare this turn, but it's now just the Firebrand too, so RDU looks like he's just going to be staying ahead on board for now.
Yeah, this Penflinger is pretty sick, though.
Oh, is he going to go in with the Raised Dead as well, do you think?
I was going to say, he can choose to solve all the problems if he wants to, but he doesn't necessarily have to. I do like just taking care of the Apprentice, and now just potentially relying on the Shadowlight Scholar instead to be able to take care of the Firebrand. But he could have gone all the way in there, potentially, with other minions as well. Fine with this. Seems reasonable.
Early Conjurer's Calling coming down there.
Yo.
And not bad. 2 Spider Tanks, effectively.
Yeah, he played 1 Spider Tank that cleared his opponent's board, got value out of it, and then turned it into 2 more Spider Tanks. That's a pretty solid outcome, honestly.
Chalk another one up for Conjurer's Calling as far as I'm concerned, so I will never stop talking about that card. Scholar is now active though for Casie, and it's very powerful when it does have its effect live. And the Dark Glare, of course, and the Penflinger are going to get some work done too. Going to see a very early Giant. Okay, maybe not very early. A quite early Giant from Casie, I'll say.
It's pretty early, yeah.
I mean,
scary enough.
Was it on Friday we saw 3 of these come down on this turn or something?
Yeah, it might have been, yeah. And I was counting Casie out way too early here, not believing in the zoo, but that Dark Glare can make some miracles happen, and that's exactly what has occurred here.
The benefit here, though, for RDU is that Ray of Frost means he can, to an extent, ignore the Giant for now and focus on clearing up the rest of the board if he can, and then use the Ray of Frost to just stall the Giant out and isolate it, and then deal with it at a future day, or just ignore it completely and try and go for lethal. It's probably not doable right now with his hand, but those Ray of Frosts are pretty powerful.
This is just going to be ping Ray of Frost, say go, I think.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, there is always a thought there to, like, have we reached the point of the game where Dark Glare isn't a threat anymore? Like, am I happy for my opponent to do a bunch of damage to themselves and refresh mana crystals because I'm just threatening lethal? But yeah, I don't think RDU is there yet. In fact, I think he's still quite some distance away from that.
I agree. And even just the fact that being a 3/4 could actually just is a threat to just trade minions, right? Never mind its ability. It's just a well-statted minion to get some value trades from as well.
That's pretty insane. Second Firebrand.
Yeah, again, we have seen some mage players cutting Firebrands, going down to 1 or sometimes 0 as well. So it's very interesting to see how RDU's tech choices, at least in this game, working out very well for him.
I think now it might just be party time for RDU. Yeah, I agree. Giddy up, go to the face. Ideally, he would have maybe liked that Firebrand to take care of the Cult Neophyte as well. That probably would have been the best reasonable outcome that RDU could have expected. He certainly did not seem to have any intentions of ever trading with it.
Yep, and this meant it was extremely likely that there'd be a 3-drop to Conjurer's Calling as well. Again, this turn if RDU so chose. And he almost has to Conjurer's Calling, right?
Does he?
Well, if he lands the Giant's just dead, and the rest of his board is dead. And he's only done 4 damage. He needs to pull 5 damage off the top, which is unlikely.
Well, he's dealt 5 because you also get to ping face if you want to, if you don't want to ping the minion. Which means then if Casie life taps, he only has to ping face twice while staying alive. And if Casey's Giant trades into his Giant, there's a pretty good chance you get to do that.
Okay, you know what?
Am I convincing you?
You've convinced me. Yeah. It is close, though, because... yeah, it's the taps, really, isn't it, for Casie? And he's going to go for it. I think he has to, reasonably enough.
Because also, relevant factor, I believe Casie only currently has 1 Soul Fragment in his deck as well, so his healing outs are also extremely limited. Just from Life Tap and from Hand of Gul'dan as well.
So now does Casie actually just isolate the Giant? Go face?
He knows that there's Conjurer's Calling as the last remaining card in hand.
That's true, yeah.
So it's just like CC the taunt, smash face, you're dead.
How many 1-drop taunts are there, Sol?
Find out for you.
I'm going to go for the value trade approach here instead, or at least a value trade to keep the Giant alive. Ignore the 1-2. does mean there is a hit. Conjurer's Call in, a reassess, and then just go for Cyclone.
Yeah, just gonna push. I love this. He just pushes the 1. That's so sick. I love it.
Oh! You still just ping, right? Yeah. You're not going to get something that's good enough.
In answer to your earlier question, 4 out of 77, Raven.
Good odds, good odds. Yeah. And that's just going to be a tap just like that. Wow. Casie knew that he needed something big there. It was not good enough. The Flame Imp would have just killed him anyway. RDU takes the victory in swift fashion so far, living up to his threats, I guess, to Casie, saying the match will be done so quick. He'll be back to streaming Battlegrounds in no time. So a really strong game there from RDU, and I think really good heads-up play. Like you were kind of on board with it very early of saying, oh, well, actually, just do anything you can to hit them in the face because the health difference is so large. RDU was high 20s, I can't remember the exact number. And obviously every turn that Casie plays with live tap, he's getting further down as well as the damage RDU push. So I actually think it was really good heads-up play from a very early stage in that game.
Yeah, and I think it is quite an exploitable weakness of Zoo, because I talk a lot about how even in the games where they're doing incredibly well, the health discrepancy is just so large that if you ever do, turn 6, whatever, when you first stick your first large minion and they've got this huge board, you're likely still at 30 and they're probably at 12, 14, 16 health or something. So they actually do have to continue to respect every minion that you play. And that problem is exacerbated enormously when they haven't had a good start. It was RDU who had the good start there, putting the tempo back in tempo mage, just getting off to an incredibly quick start and just forcing damage. So that meant as soon as he lost control, he didn't really have to care about being defensive himself. Even though he was behind, he correctly recognized that he was still the aggressor in the situation.
Yeah, well, off to a lightning start, RDU versus Casie. RDU leading 1-0. We're going to go to a quick break while we set up our game number 2. So don't go anywhere, and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are going into our game number 2 between RDU and Casie, and RDU so far taking a quick and swift victory there in game number 1, but there's plenty more to go yet, Sol. And even though that did look impressive, it looks like we are going to have a Rogue versus Mage matchup with RDU being on the Rogue and Casie switching over to his Mage for game number 2.
That's right. And just a reminder, RDU is playing something a little bit more unusual in this week's GM. I mean, he has been bringing this deck predominantly. It's been him and Bloody Face who've been the two biggest proponents of this deck, at least that I've seen. Playing kind of something similar to what Casie is playing and what we saw largely yesterday with the whole Secret Passage, the Hanar package, all that kind of business. But instead of the Secret Package, RDU is choosing to go with a light stealth package as well, which makes his deck similar but slightly more aggressive than the build that Casie has. And Casie himself and his Rogue has gone a little bit more towards the aggression because he is playing 2 copies of Eviscerate instead of Vendetta. But RDU is about as aggressively as you can lean this deck without actually being classified as an aggro rogue at that point, right? Like, it's still recognizable as that same like Secret Passage heavy and value-ish variant, but it leans as aggressively as you possibly can within that build of the deck.
Yeah, to be any more aggressive, it would have to start running the weapons, right?
Yes,
like
exactly.
That's the key difference you'll see of RDU's list versus what you might run into on ladder with some aggressive tools. It really is the weapons. But I will say the Ashtongue Slayer, which makes a stealth minion have extra damage and be immune for a turn, I've seen get some insane work done. So I'm excited to see if it does it again here for RDU. But Casie has gone over to his mage and just taking a quick look at Casey's build. He is running the 1 devolving missiles in there, which might come in pretty clutch actually versus RDU's Rogue. A lot of good targets there. But overall, just the 1 makers and the 1 conjurers calling in there. So not going either overly crazy, I'd say, with an Antonidas in the list that we saw some of yesterday from some of the other players, but also still having that conjurers in there for some of that extra late game power.
Yeah, and speaking of doing sick things with the Ashtongue Slayer, I think Killing All Day in Americas last night had an incredibly sick lethal where using double Secret Passage, he was able to essentially see every card remaining in his deck, and he knew that by seeing every card in his deck, he had access to double Passage, double Eviscerate, Ashtongue Slayer, Shadow Step, Ashtongue Slayer for exactly. It was really, really sick.
You know, Neophyte, a card that's becoming more and more common in a lot of decks right now, is going to get some use done. And Casie unhappy with the outcome, having to trade instead when he had 4 shots at landing 2. And suddenly, Casey's hand is powerful in one way, but also quite weak in the other, right? Now that he just has Apprentice Ray of Frost, he can slow down this Edwin Van Cleave. But the 2 giants are quite the way away yet.
They are. This Ray of Frost is going to start helping at least just a little bit. But Casie really needs to start picking up card draw, magic tricks, or evocation very, very soon to be able to tempo swing this as hard as possible. Interesting lines for RDU as well. He has kind of pulled his way out of it here because he picked up a 1-drop in the second Worgen. But by going the way he did, obviously massive upside in getting the huge minion, the 6/6 in play immediately. But he did leave his Miscreant stranded in hand, whereas potentially if he'd have gone Coin Miscreant that turn instead and then played either a Lackey or a 1-drop in his hand, he would have then had smooth combo activators for everything else in his hand from that point. But instead of doing that, he just absolutely valued having the biggest possible minion in play that turn instead.
Yeah, and he does have, or did, I guess, have when he made the decision, he had the backup of Secret Passage, and his curve of his deck is very low, so even on 4 mana, him playing Secret Passage probably lets him play minimum of 1 card, probably 2, with the draws he was going to get. So he still had a turn. He wouldn't have had to just play an evil Miscreant uncomboed and passed, right? There was still probably a decent turn, but you are right, this pickup of the 1-drop helps him actually just have an even stronger turn now, and still have that Secret Passage to have an explosive turn later on.
Well, Maker not bad. Font of Power also not bad, because that is 2 discounts for each of his Mana Giant. 1 from the spell itself, of course, and then 1 from the minion that you pull. Pretty solid. Probably not the explosive draw that he needed.
but now more and more lackeys. And although Edwin having Taunt isn't normally what you'd want to see, or what you would see as a rogue player trying to actually keep Edwin alive and not give it Taunt, this is just all about the extra health here, because RDU, as you can see, trades away most of the board, which means that a ton of damage still has to come out to stop this Edwin.
Yeah, and as powerful a card as Jandis is, this is about the worst possible board that you can be playing Jandis into, with all of these 1/1 lackeys just ready to snipe away the illusion. Meaning you're playing a fairly low-value 5-drop overall from that point, but about the best that Casie had. On top of that, there's just a 3/1 that can trade into the higher value minion that you summon as well, which really isn't much better.
And that 3/1 drawing you a spell?
Yeah.
Wow, it's just a good card at that point, right? It's one of those great generated cards, and just look at all the options RDU has. He honestly isn't that far away, maybe with the help of a secret passage next turn, of just like setting up some kind of 2-turn lethal with the amount of damage he can have access to next turn.
Yeah, the fact that this 6/6 is now starting to connect, the Rare Frosts are out the window.
He has a stealth minion if he can draw some Ash Tongue Slayers next turn for extra damage from the secret passage. I knew it! I was literally going to say this Arcane Missiles is going to be horrible, and it was, just because that feels the way the game was going for Casie. That's because he doesn't believe Sol. That's why. His first Arcane Missiles was bad, and he did not believe in the second one, and that's why.
Oh my god. That was absurd. Vendetta pickup here is incredible. Had the one thief in hand for the easy activator. So he can now just choose to Vendetta 1, clear it up, and then, yeah, Brain Freeze. Oh no! No! He's gonna have to Shadow Step. Okay, yeah, so Brain Freeze is actually a rogue card. It's a rogue mage dual class. I feel, just from the moment of hesitation, that RDU did forget about that for a second and then had to fix on the fly with the Shadow Step.
Because the fact that you could say, oh, but it's mage, right, but it is technically rogue. You can put it in your deck, therefore it's a rogue card, which means it does not activate Vendetta. But still a very good pick, though, just from the fact that either it's tons of damage or the freeze effect.
Right. If he didn't have the Shadow Step, then you would have to argue that just actually picking a mage spell there was superior. But since he had the Shadow Step, he could just get the best of both worlds going on.
Both Giants cleaned up. There's just Jandis and a Dream now for Casie. What do you think of those other two options, Sol? Did you even see them?
I did not. No, I see that he has a dragon in his hand, and we're moving on from there.
Oh, Necrium Apothecary again. And this just feels like it's lethal most of the time with passage, right?
Sap the Netherwing, dragon in hand.
Yeah, he wants to deal damage to Casie.
Yeah.
Casie has to play it in the wrong order now.
Passage again. He's just going to rip the passage again. All he needs is one of this. There's the one of this. Game over. Wow. 2-0 RDU.
Yeah, and honestly, this is not a bad thing by any means, but that felt like a very straightforward game from RDU there. Just clean execution. Apart from maybe, okay, we can talk about the Brain Freeze maybe, but just like felt like just a good game, right? Everything just went fairly straightforward. He put a ton of damage down. The Edwin just stuck around and couldn't be cleaned off by Casie, and then it just snowballed from there. And bear in mind, RDU did kill 2 mana giants in that game as well, and still was easily hit lethal, right? It's not like he had to kind of close his eyes a little bit and just go face and hope. He just had full control of that game.
Yeah, he absolutely did. I think he had full control of that game, evidenced by the fact that he could have just shut his eyes and gone face with everything. Right, and probably still would have won against the 2 mana giants at that point, because he was miles ahead. The giants were just a turn or two too slow for Casie. Which, that because that was his hand, they were too slow. Obviously, I'm not saying like to win that matchup you have to get a mana giant down on turn 3 or turn 4, but when your opening hand is double mana giant, you then need Apprentice Evocation to go along with that to be able to cheat them out incredibly quickly, or you're probably going to lose quite a few games of Hearthstone. So the fact that none of that really came together for Casie, it was always going to be a struggle. Like, ludicrous arcane missiles aside, or as funny as that was, I don't know how much he could have clawed his way back into it with some slightly better missiles, but certainly he's got some clawing back to do in the series as a whole now, because he finds himself 2-0 down against RDU with only RDU's Highlander Priest left for RDU to win with.
Yeah, and you can see there his score so far 15-7 with that Highlander Priest. And honestly, even from week 1, quite early, of course, but I think even week 1, when we were seeing RDU pilot this deck, we were kind of impressed with his approach to the game plan, especially in the mirrors, but also just in general. Again, just execution seemed good. The sort of preemptive knowledge of how to play a matchup seemed very good from RDU with the Priest. And the results back it up, right? He has a very good score, especially considering he's probably played a good chunk of mirrors within that as well.
Yeah, he did seem to grasp very quickly that this version of Priest is a little more tempo heavy than we might be used to seeing with the older versions of Galakron Priest, especially in the mirror, where no one ever died in the mirror before this expansion, whereas now it does tend to happen quite a lot more often, and RDU has been absolutely the #1 proponent of actually being able to kill people in Priest mirrors up until that point. But no Priest mirror possible here, because Casie does not have a Priest in sight in his lineup, but he is going to have to complete the full reverse sweep against the deck that probably isn't still regarded as the absolute terror of the metagame, but certainly at one point was considered to be absolutely king of the hill in terms of the Scholar Man's.
Yeah, and I think Casey's maybe laughing because if not, he would cry at this point, because Casey's got a good opening hand as far as I'm concerned, but just seeing that the one disciple of Galakron, like the one playable one drop was in RDU's opening hand there, just to start messing with the turns going forward. And we can see, of course, there's the Casie and then double Acolyte to back it up with, so still looking pretty good for RDU.
Yeah, key phrase there being double Acolyte in RDU's Highlander Priest deck already on turn 4 and turn 5, potentially, if he can find the spells to go with it.
Pretty interesting coming up here, Sottle. There is a choice of the Shadow Madness for the Spellwing here. It's off curve and a little bit weird, of course. Okay, maybe the choice changes now, but there was a choice just to take away the Arcane Missiles for Casie. Do you think that would be overkill, as there are potentially way better targets, or do you think it would be a good sort of tempo play without maybe the draw he's just has?
I think it's, when it's up against just player 5/5, for example, as it already was, I don't think it would have been something that RDU was considering too heavily. I do think the Lazul scheme draw there was pretty exciting, though, just because it was a very high tempo option. But again, RDU had a really good tempo option of just player 5/5 that turn anyway. I think if he had no other minions to develop, he might have just traded into the One Thief and then stolen one of the other, either the spell damage or the arcane missiles away. But since he just has such a high tempo play with the dragon anyway, I think he was always going to do that. No! Casie, just don't cast any more missile effects. See, I told you! Why are you bothering? At this point, this is just your fault. You've seen what's going to happen. Just play any other card.
Just stop putting them in your deck. Take any card with missiles out of your deck, Casie, because you cannot aim that thing. Unbelievable, actually. Just unbelievable. Casie can't believe it. I can't believe it.
So there was the spell damage missiles that missed the 3-1 at the start, right? So you say, let's say the first missile there hit the target he wanted to, then 3 missed. Then he had the 3 missiles go face, so that's 6. Then he had 3 devolving missiles miss, so that's 9. Then he had 3 arcane missiles again. That's the last 12 missile effects that Casie has cast have hit the wrong target. 12.
And RDU's got a Sorcerer's Apprentice right now.
Details, Raven. Details, okay?
Yeah, because why not at this point? And he can just do the steal on the Spellwing anyway. Casie, just get out of this game, because it's just not your day, my friend. Insane. Like, how has
Whispers
RDU
of Evil
got
that cost 0, Raven?
How has RDU got a mage board?
I mean, because he's a priest, obviously. I don't know why that's confusing.
This early in the game, it feels confusing to all.
Okay.
arcane missiles with a lab partner and a sorcerer's apprentice on the side of the board, you wouldn't have guessed it would have been the priest.
Oh, boy. Well, that's a really nice-looking Raz Frost Whisper you've got there. It would be a shame if something were to, I don't know, happen to it. You know what the best part of this? How completely unflappable RDU has been during this whole thing. There's no indication on RDU's face. It's like, wow, I'm really high rolling this series. Like he's just sat playing Hearthstone. This is the new normal for RDU.
Just a game, it's got to get back to Battlegrounds. The trade, the second Cabal, and this might just break Casie. There we go. Yeah, I thought so. Oh, Casey's it's just one of those series of Hearthstone. Oh, wow.
Someday I'll be just like you.
Just go. Just go. Never devolving
No,
missile.
you can't
Never
pick the middle one.
devolving
There we
missile.
go,
Okay,
okay.
he's figured it out. Uh-huh.
Honestly, if I was Casie, I'd be terrified of a third Acolyte somehow to steal these Solarian.
Yep. Yep. Okay.
Okay, Frost Nova.
Nova and Kunj.
There's a missiles, though.
And a generated Kunj as well. Interesting.
Yep.
No, don't play the missiles. I'm not sure how it scams you, but it'll find a way.
Oh, they were the best missiles Casey's cast all day.
Oh, never mind. Everything's fine. Everything's fine, Raven. Take it all back.
RDU's composure straight out the window. Like, God, I'm so unlucky. Yes. Well, now we've got the game of Hearthstone again.
Dude.
Even the Netherwind Ball, not half bad at all, not only because it's a secret Friday you have to consider, but also it's just an extra minion, almost certainly. Hang on a minute. Does Murazan just somehow win RDU the game? Probably.
Yeah, exactly. The question, like, so he has a reasonable turn here. I mean, he does have to consider Counterspell, but the question is the Murazan just too good to not play this turn? And it probably is. There are a lot of random things that can go wrong in terms of Conjurer's Calling and the targeted spells, like Brain Freeze, for example, that he just got away with. But he casts his own Sorcerer's Evocation this turn, which is obviously insane. He did then Conjurer's Calling his Sorcerers, though, so his Evocation is going to end up being completely wasted.
I will crush your delusions of grandeur.
It's pretty good Murazan, though, even though it wasn't the best it could have been, but it was still very powerful. And of course, on top of that, he gets an 8/8, which is maybe not talked about enough with the Murazan. It's all about what it's all about like what Murazan does versus you get that and a big 8/8 dragon right as well. Like it's a pretty serious minion.
Well. Yup. Yeah, this isn't normal.
Soul Mirror. Oh, it's so funny.
So who would like 8 cards?
Yeah, everyone gets 8 cards. Also, he can can't he push all damage to the? No, he can't do that, right? That won't work.
Is it just lethal? It's lethal. It's just lethal, Raven. It's just lethal. Breath, penance. It's 25.
I didn't even count. I'm an idiot. Casie cannot believe it. RDU. Who cares about all those insane responses Casie managed? It just doesn't matter. That's game, that series. RDU takes it, and just like he said, still in time to stream some Battlegrounds later on.
Just not bothered.
Look at the smirk.
Not
Look at
even
the smirk.
slightly bothered. Look at the absolute state
there.
of you, RDU. Yes, that is Hearthstone right there. That's what we came to see. Round of applause, everyone. That's the series. Let's just have that all day. Incredible.
Well, what's nutty about that is that series was wild. You could say to an extent as wild or close to as wild as the last series of yesterday. It was just condensed down into like 10 minutes as opposed to 2 hours. So it was just sometimes you just always are going to win a series of Hearthstone, and I think that was just RDU's day today, because that, no matter what happened, looked unwinnable for Casie. Incredible.
It looked unwinnable for Casie, then it looked unlosable for Casie when, all of the 20 things that went wrong for him were just immediately eclipsed by one hyper nuts outcome from a single Conjurer's Calling. It just felt like it absolutely swung back everything. But then just the quality of the Murazond on the other side with most things going right. Obviously, the Batterhead got frozen, which is the best target to freeze. He lost the Conjurer's Calling a little bit, but not too much, where he lost his Sorcerer's Apprentice, so he couldn't end up using any of the evocation spells. But everything else just went absolutely fine for him that turn. And then the fact that he just had an unanswerable board and then 3 removal spells in hand to plow through the Ironbark Protector. I could list probably the first 15 dumb things that happened that series and probably would still forget about the 5 dumbest things that happened that series. Yeah. That's how ridiculous it was.
It honestly, and that's why, casters miss lethal, or at least caster did. But I honestly just looked at the Ironbark and just assumed it required a trade. Stupidly. Like you have to trade if you're RDU right now. I just assumed it would require the trade